Well, there we've done it. We've completed the Christmas story. The wise men with their gifts have arrived, and we can move on. But first, I just want to call our attention to a couple of details in the account that we just heard. For there's more to this popular story that we know so well. We know the camels and the star and the three magi with their gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. They're all beautifully depicted in Hallmark greeting cards with the gold emphasized. But we need to hear the gospel writers say, and Herod was afraid. He was frightened. Herod was a half-Jew. He ruled over Palestine as a puppet king from the Roman Empire. He had been an officer in the Roman army. His kingship was a reward from the Senate for his military service. He is described as a vicious brute of a man. It is said that it was safer to be Herod's pig than his son. And if we read further into the account, we hear of the slaughter of the innocents. Herod was so furious when the Magi didn't return, and he was so frightened by the threat of a new king, even a babe, that he ordered the death of all children around Bethlehem who were under the age of 2. Can you imagine? So you see, Jesus' birth becomes political right off the bat. It sets up two positions. Those who saw his arrival as good news, and Herods of the world, who couldn't abide the threat of God's power interfering in their sphere of influence. The second point I want to draw out of the reading is the news that the wise men, the Magi, returned another way. They were changed. Their encounter with the Christ child changed them. So that's the question I want us to think about. How would that change have come about? They had heard and obeyed the voice that came to them in the night. So they were no longer under control of Herod. See, that's what can happen when we seek out the Christ child and allow him to enter into our lives. It's the core of the Christmas message. Being in the presence of the Christ child changes us. Well, to help illustrate that, I have an alternate version of the story of the Magi. It's a beautifully written book by Mary Hoffman. It's entitled 3 Wise Women. It's a poignant story with beautiful illustrations. I just wish we could just gather around a rocking chair with the book and a fireplace to really take in this book, but we'll do our best. I was happy that I got to do this Sunday because I like it so much, and I also get to tell my one little joke. I hope you get it. You know the one. If the wise men had been women, what would have been different? Well, first of all, they would have arrived on time, not 2 years later. They would have brought a casserole and a supply of diapers, and they would have stayed long enough to help clean up the stable. So anyway, this story allows us to enter into the scene, but with gifts that are not gold and frankincense, personal ones that might help us ponder what we might give. So listen to the story of the 3 wise women. And you can picture the illustration. These are women from the Middle East. They're brown-skinned and dark-haired and beautiful. In the west, the sky was bright with stars as a young woman stayed up late baking bread. As she waited for the dough to rise, she went to the door and combed her hair, singing a song about the moonlight. Suddenly she stopped. Far away in the east there was a new star, brighter than all the rest. It was so bright that it bathed the woman's kitchen in starshine. The beams from the star shone right onto the dough. The woman stared in disbelief. The dough was rising, and it was filled with starlight. She was afraid to touch it at first, but it was quite firm and ready to be baked, so she cooked it in the oven. As soon as it is ready, she said to herself, I shall take the star bread and travel east. I must find where the great light is coming from. Way down in the south, where countries are hotter, another woman sat up late at night rocking her child. He was cutting a tooth and could not sleep. His mother hummed to him and loved him with words that no one else could understand. Shall Mama get you the moon, sweet baby, she crooned. I could cut you a slice like a piece of mango to cool your cool mouth. The young child stretched out his fat little arms to the moon, and his mother laughed. Then they saw a strange sight, a bright new star rising in the northeast. Starlight shone on the child's face, making him smile. His mother watched in silence, her heart filled with desire to leave her village and follow the bright star. Far away in the southeast, an old woman was telling stories to her grandchildren by the dying light of a cooking fire. Their mother sat resting for the first time that day, while the old woman spoke of tigers and monkeys and temples and snakes and lotus flowers. But gradually the story began to change, and suddenly there was a star in it. Just like that star up there in the northwest, said the old woman. Then what happened, Grandma? The children prompted her, for she had stopped in mid-story and was gazing at the star till it filled her mind. And all the children hushed and gazed with her, forgetting the story they had been listening to and wanting a new one full of silver starlight. What was it about that star? There was something different about it, which drew all three women from their homelands, and something the same that said to each of them, follow me. They met on a path of starlight, not knowing how long or far they had traveled. They were not hungry or thirsty or tired, so each supposed her journey had been short. They found themselves on a dusty road at midnight, where the sky was a deep, dark blue, and the moon a fingernail of mother of the moon. Each woman looked towards her own bright star, which seemed to stand still over a huddle of houses. The end of our journey, said the grandmother. Let me carry your baby for a while, said the young woman to the mother. And they all walked together through the hills, past sleeping shepherds, down to the town. The star stayed where it was, growing ever bigger and brighter. It threw down great white spheres of starlight onto a small white building with a thatched roof. The young woman started when she saw people coming out of the building and gave the baby back to his mother. They all watched as men in fine robes and their servants mounted on camels and rode away. Others have followed the star before us, said the mother. Suddenly all three women were afraid. We have come so far, said the young woman. We must go inside. They ducked their heads under the low door beam and looked in. It was just a stable with horses and donkeys. But it was also a home for a new family, a man and a woman and a newborn child, all bathed in silver starlight. And it was gold, too, a whole heap of it by the baby's makeshift crib, and other rich presents. But nothing was as bright or as rich as the glow surrounding the baby. Come in, said the new mother, and the women entered quietly. Their hearts were full. They too wanted to give presents. They told the babe's mother how they had left their homes drawn by the star, They had traveled by star path and moonlight, hardly knowing how they got there. The young woman took the loaf of star bread from her bundle. It was still warm and smelled fresh. She gave it to the baby's mother, and although he was too young to eat it, the baby touched the loaf as if to bless it. The grandmother said, "I have nothing in my bundle to give the child, but I would like to tell him the story." Then the three women sat in the straw with the new family, and the grandmother told a story full of starlight and hope. And all the time, the mother from the south held her sleeping baby, and her heart was pounding. For he was all she had to give. And though she was filled with a strange new love for the baby in the crib, her own child was dear to her as life itself. When the story ended, her child awoke. Straight away he saw the baby and held out his arms to him. The two mothers held their sons, and the child gave the baby a kiss full of starlight. His mother sighed and held her child tight. There had been a present, after all. The three wise women left the stable and walked the paths the star had made to lead them home. When they got back to their villages, no one noticed that they had been away, and no one remembered the star. But the star baby in the stable never forgot the women and their three presents. When he grew up, he showed that fresh baked loaves taste even better when they are shared. He told the most wonderful stories to anyone who would listen. And a man whose birth had been marked by a new star taught the whole world that the greatest gift of all is love. And so I ask, if you had been there at the stake, what would you have offered the Christ child? What can you offer now? And may I suggest that, like the young woman from the West, we can offer bread, a symbol of companionship, breaking bread together, sharing from our kitchens, potluck lunches where we befriend a stranger, giving food to community cares, taking a meal to a shut-in, remembering that Jesus took a loaf of bread and said, "Eat in remembrance of me." Like the young woman from the south who with her son, gave their love to the baby Jesus. We too can share our love with others wherever we go. We can visit those in hospital. We can visit with the older people who can no longer interact in large gatherings. The housebound. We can comfort the bereaved. Our love is a gift from God, meant to be shared. Like the grandmother from the southeast, we can be a storyteller, sharing the story of God's love for all people, telling it again and again. The three wise women gave their gifts of bread, story, and love. So as we enter this new year, may our gifts be as simple, as practical, and as faithful. With God's help, may we be the hands and feet of Christ.